At what point does a dream transition to something that causes suffering? Like, what do I need to do to get that home? How do people afford this? And why can't I get there? And like, what do I need to do? And then you're just miserable.
Suffering, I think, happens when you have a daydream and you deny it to yourself, being resentful towards the stories you've made up about your current life as being the reasons that you can't go and play in this new possibility. Go take a look, or just stay exactly where you are. No story needed. Welcome back to Live Into Your Brilliance, the place we go on deep explorations to find the experiments and the insights that help us see the truth of who we are and live the lives that we love. Today, you've got your normal geriatric duo, myself and Bilos. We've just been ribbing each other as to just how old we think each other is looking at the minute. And so this should be an intriguing podcast to see where it goes, because the humor feels high amongst us. So how are you doing, mate? Good to see you on the airwaves, even though we've just been chatting off the airwaves.
I know, and it's great that I was just thinking, like, you don't even wear glasses, and you're slightly older than me, and you don't wear glasses, and I don't know if I'm fuzzy to you or if I'm in focus, but I think it's pretty amazing that you don't need glasses, do you?
The lengths that I'll go to try and like maintain the mirage of
The
youth,
vanity.
that I'll just not wear glasses, but refuse to see the world clearly. No, I appreciate you. Although what people don't even know about you is you don't even actually have bad eyesight, that you're just wearing those glasses because you think you look cool.
No, this is plain glass. It's just the intellectual look I'm going for.
So, mate, you said just before we came on, you mentioned one word that you said we'd like to talk about today, and I was like, well, let's not say any more. Just let's dive in, because I'm intrigued as to where you're going. So let's dive in and get this show on the road. What's cooking in that melting pot of yours called your mind?
Well, the word is dreams, and and I've sort of just been mulling this over because I'm a daydreamer for sure, and I mean I love daydreaming. You know, I'm like I can go to my nothing box and just exist there and just sort of you know indulge fantasies and dreams and funny ideas, and I often like I'll just burst out laughing because I've just thought of something or dreamt of something crazy and funny. But then I got thinking, and it's an extension of the conversations we've had around attachments and 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 so I don't know the answer to this. Like I have no fucking idea what I'm talking about, but it is something that intrigues me, um, sort of philosophically, um, and I guess spiritually. Is at what point does a dream transition from being a kind of fun fantasy movie in your head, delight, to something that causes suffering?
Oh,
So I'll give you
yeah,
a practical example because this is one of my favorite things to do. And I've done this for years. I go to, homes.com or Zillow or, you know, um, uh, prop right moves or what have you. And it's often in relation to the travel that we do.
yeah.
So I even did it in Morocco now. Like Vanny and I were in Morocco for a week. Just going around Morocco, I'd like go onto a website in the evening and just out of shits and giggles, I'd be like, oh, uh, you know, uh, is there a riad for sale in Fez? And I'd look
Hmm.
at these beautiful riads, that with the gorgeous courtyards and gardens, and her mums and stuff. And I like that for me is like it brings me such joy because I have no intention of buying a riad,
Mm,
but I just love looking at these gorgeous properties. And I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast, but Vanny and I are sort of thinking, well, we're empty nesters, and like,
mm,
Vanny's always wanted to live near the beach. Like, do we move to the North Shore of Massachusetts and live near the beach? And so I always go and look at properties, but I don't. I'm very conscious that I don't become attached to the idea of Newburyport or Fez or Cape Town or Madrid. I just I just like let it wash over me like a cool breeze. I'm just like, what will be will be. Like if it happens, it happens. If we stay in Sudbury for the rest of our days and they carry me out in a pine box here, I don't really give a shit. And that's as a result of some hard work because I used to give a shit. Um, but but then the flip side of it is the fantasizing about the lovely homes and the what have you. Sometimes, certainly in my past, and I'm sure I'm human in this regard, is you're like, fuck, what do I need to do to get that home? Like, why is there you know, I don't know, I'm just making numbers up here. Like, why is there a $4 million home on the coast with its little private beach and like, how do people afford this and why can't I get there, and like what do I need to do, like do I need to push harder, and blah 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 blah. And
mm.
so and then you're just miserable, and so
We,
your dream almost slips into being a must have or a want or a desire, and everything that comes with those wrong-headed attachments comes flooding in, and then all of a sudden you're miserable as sin. Whereas if you just like go onto Zillow and you look at the 4 million, and which I actually love now, like I go to the $20 million homes and I'm like, what the fuck is in this place that makes it $20 million? And
mm.
then you see all the finishes and the wine cellars and the theaters and the sprawling horse paddocks or whatever. You're like, wow, amazing. No thanks. That would make me so miserable. But I'm
Well,
just like,
just let me jump in there. So, why would that make
yeah,
you miserable?
because it's too much. I just don't want it. I have no desire to live in something that size with all that stuff. Like, I'm trying to convince Vanny to buy a Mercedes Sprinter and live in that for a couple of years. So it's like,
Was just the reason I jumped in is because it's interesting to kind of catch that of going like, there's no house that can make you miserable. Yeah, there's no dream that can make you miserable. Like it's just actually impossible. No dream can ever cause you suffering. And no house can ever make you miserable, and no house can ever make you sad or ever make you happy. So I just because that's interesting. Like you look at the 20 million pound house and all the finishings, and you go, that would make me miserable. And the answer is the way you got to is like, oh, I don't actually want it. I don't want that house. So it's just like, oh, just you like it was just interesting seeing you get to the cleanness of the perspective of I actually just don't want it. Now, if you said I want that house, that wouldn't be a problem either, would it? Really, if you
no,
wanted a 20 million, if you wanted that house, if you're like, oh my god, that house would be amazing. Um, unless we think that something lives in that house called
yeah,
happiness or a
ego,
better life.
baby, ego.
Well, yeah, like because that is the ego talking. The ego is the one that's going like trying to always make the ego's job in one sense, or the ego thinks its job is to come up with the answers for what it thinks will A, keep us safe, and B, keep us happy. So it's constantly tripping itself up and getting itself into a tailspin between the idea of like, I got to keep you safe, but I also have to try and like figure out what's going to make you happy because we don't want to be sad, which is just another word for I got to keep you safe from sadness. So that is like that's the ego just working away, doing its merry job. Um, but the flip, and what I thought you were going to ask about dreams, which is interesting because I think it's the other side of this coin, is like I thought you were going to ask something around like when does a dream transition or into being something more than a daydream, which I thought was where you were going to go. And I actually think it's kind of part of the answer because you've answered some of the question, which is daydreaming is a lot of fun. For you, daydreaming is fun. It's not a problem. There's no suffering in your explorations of a riad in Morocco, like because you're just daydreaming, like chits and giggles. You've nothing on it, and you're like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then you get back to like doing whatever you're doing and just put it away because it was never anything more than just a bit of play in the thought created ideas of what could be, and then just put it away because you're like, but I've not got no interest in doing it. So that's one place that I think. So one is to just have no attachment. I think the other place where it becomes suffering is when someone's having a daydream and the answer to the question is not that they don't want it, but actually they do want it. Like they actually are drawn to something. They have a daydream and then they're drawn to it. And then their ego, whatever their like thought, their thought kicks in that denies them the possibility, and they immediately start to talk themselves out of it. And they're like, I can't have that because I can't take the kids out of school. If someone wanted to live abroad, and I've got a story because I met a friend of mine yesterday for breakfast, and it's just the fucking coolest thing ever what they're doing. But um, they have someone has a daydream, and then they start to talk themselves out of it almost immediately. But actually, they're quite drawn to doing something like the daydream. Daydreams are full of possibility and potential. And I think that's when they also transition into suffering, is when people convince themselves that they're not allowed have or they're not allowed to step into that possibility, even though they really want it. And so I'm going to give you an example of how to avoid that type of suffering as well. Because A, there's no guarantees you can get what you want, but often in a daydream, I think the possibility that lives in daydreams is much more accessible than people even give themselves permission to believe it's accessible. But my mate Dan, who I met for a coffee yesterday, because he'd messaged me the other week, had said, "You want to go for a coffee? I'm moving to Dubai on the 22nd of October." I was
Fantastic.
um, sure,
It's
like
like a
let's grab a
Bruce
coffee.
Chapman move.
Who's Bruce Chapman?
When he's a sort of he I think he worked in the auctioneering world in London, and then he just left a note on his desk, gone to Patagonia.
Yeah, okay, I like that. So it's a Bruce Chapman move. So anyway, I meet him for coffee yesterday, and I'm like, this has happened really fast, and it has happened in the space of about 8 weeks. But he said the trigger for it was there's a variety of things, but one of the biggest triggers was his wife said, well, I would love to live by the beach. They were on holidays, and they've always talked about like that they'd love to live abroad, but they were on holidays in August, and there's a bunch of other stuff happening that means that there's the possibility was on the table. But she said, I would love to live by the beach. And Dan said to her, well, we can do that. And Sarah, his wife, immediately went, no, like started giving him all the reasons, and he just stopped her in her tracks, and he said, no, 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 like we can just do that. And And that was the start of everything. And it turned into the conversation like, do we want to, is that what we're drawn to do? Is that what we want to do? And then they both got to the conclusion of, yeah, like irrespective of all the other circumstances that are going on, they got to, even if they weren't true, the answer was, yeah, we do. It was like, right, let's do it. And in the space of eight
Fantastic.
weeks, in the space of 8 weeks, they've sold their house, gotten a residential visa for Dubai, taken their eldest daughter out of school, sold their cars, um, and they are shipping out to Dubai the 22nd, whatever that is, next Wednesday, to live for like however many years. Like they're just going to go and do it. Now, no suffering there either. Daydream almost went down the route of denial, and then just Dan, fair play to him, caught it and went, no, 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 like we can. Is that what we want to do right now? And the answer was yes. It's like, okay. Now, he said, like, it's been a hell of an 8 weeks. He said he did a to do list, the length of your arm, to actually make that happen. And at times,
Yeah.
they went to bed going, are we going to even get everything done? So it's like there was still a game to be played, but they were no longer in a daydream. They were like that whatever was in that daydream, rather than deny it, they were like, oh my goodness, this isn't a daydream. This is a real, like, felt, like, desire, like a drawn to do something. And they immediately transitioned out of daydreaming to real life playing. Again, no suffering. So if we put daydreaming on either side, like, and I'm just gonna put like your daydream, your Riyadh in Morocco, and Dan and Sarah's daydream of Dubai, no suffering, because you're like, oh, this was just a daydream. It doesn't mean anything. Like, I don't actually want to do this. So no problems. Like, nothing lives in the Riyadh in Morocco. No suffering. Dan and Sarah daydream. They're like, oh, we actually really want to do this. Let's get on and do it. No suffering. When a daydream turns into suffering is when we do the opposite of both those things. So on your side, where someone starts to become attached to the idea that they should do that and they must do that, but like there's something that lives there. So they start to make up a story about, like, this other world, make believe world, being better than the world they're in now. And so just using it to play it off against their current reality. Or
Mm.
suffering, I think, happens when you have a daydream, which is totally accessible, something you actually really want to do, and you deny it to yourself. And then you live in a space of longing for the thing that you're denying to yourself, but also, like, being resentful towards the stories you've made up about your current life as being the reasons that you can't go and play in this new possibility.
I want to ask you if there's a third dynamic to that. If you said, like Dan and his wife, we want to live near the beach, and you get caught up not so much in what lives there, happiness, what have you, but you get caught up in the how we get there, or the, like, it's almost like uh your preferred route to that. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about um our ego tries to ensure that we are safe, and we don't do things that make us unhappy. So do you
Yeah.
think that there's something in that as well? Because I'll tell you, why I said that. If you think about um, wanting the big fancy house, which seems to be a thing, then then the way in which you believe you get there is you go and work yourself to the bone. You take on maybe more debt than you should. You make choices, and and compromises and sacrifices and maybe some unethical decisions in order to get to what you fundamentally believe you deserve. Now, whether you believe that happiness resides in that house, or social status, or um, the admiration of your peers, like whatever that is, that's a thing for sure. But the path to it is also a thing, and versus saying, kind of like what you were like pointing to, I think, which is like, oh yeah, I'd love to live by the beach. How that's going to happen, I have no idea. I'm just going to surrender that to the universe. And if we're meant to end up at the beach, we'll end up at the beach. It could be in a caravan or a tent, or it could be in a $20 million home. I don't really care.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great one. So, like, let's explore it because I think so. Let's take the $20 million home just as a starting point. Like, I'm pretty confident neither you nor I could just go out and buy a $20 million home today if we wanted to.
Well,
Or maybe
I
you could.
could, but
Okay.
no, I
Yeah. Well,
could, but
you're much
it
richer
wouldn't
than me.
last long. It wouldn't last long.
Right. Well, well, you know
somebody
where I'm
would
going. Well,
somebody would find out.
yeah, take it back off you. But the reason I said that is because, like, so that's a different thing, I think. So let's just say someone has a daydream about the £20 million home, or which is fine again, or the whatever, a lifestyle, but a lifestyle that is currently not on offer. It's just not
Yeah.
there. Like, let's just say someone's going, like, they don't actually have the means to buy a £20 million house. But and you used the words which I thought was really interesting. You went, but they think they deserve it, and it's like, well, that would be a slippy slope. Like thinking, but I deserve that house. The reason I'm putting, but I think where we start to, like, daydreams that are full of things that we can't have right now, I think are ones we want to be wary of. Like when we start to, that's when we start to get attached to. Maybe it's the better house. Maybe it's like a different home. It's like that, because I think that is still that idea of like there's going to be something better, which is slightly different to the how question. Like if you're not attached to it, so like I kind of want to play two sides of this. If you're not attached to the $20 million home, and you're like, I would love to live in that home. Like you see the home on Zoopla or whatever, and you're going, that would be amazing. Like I would love that. And someone goes, what are you doing about it? And you say, well, I'm not really doing anything about it because like there's no way for me. I don't have a route to get there. Like I can just hold that in my awareness and be like, that would be amazing if it happened. But I'm just going to keep on living my life. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Because I think that distinction of if something's on offer right now or not is a good one to play in. Is like, is it actually on offer? $20 million
Mm.
home, and you go, no, it's not on offer right now. Okay, well, then there's nothing for you to do other than continue to do what you know to do in the life you're living. And if that becomes an offer to you, it might come an offer. And if it's truly meant for you, then hey, it will. Because if that's what's alive inside you, you'll move in that direction. I think the other place though is when it is on offer. Like that's the place that I get really interested in because I think a lot of people's daydreams are more on offer than they even realize. That's why they're like, I would
Mm.
like to live by the beach one is an interesting one. Or someone goes, I'd love to leave, I'd love to do a career switch. And they fantasize about that in their daydream, they see themselves as a teacher and
Mm.
changing people's lives, or they see themselves as I'm going to just set up a microbrewery in Maine, and I'm going to live in my lakeside cabin, and I'm going to just get out, walk every day, whatever it might be. And then they go, but of course I can't do that. And the answer is, well, is that really true? And do you remember we had Tucker Garrison on here, like probably a year ago or so? And
Mhm.
the reason it sticks in my mind is because before you came on, like we were having the pre-chat, and I was on, and Tucker came on the call, and he has his long hair, but it's like slicked back, and I was like, oh, what have you been up to? And he said, oh, I've just been out for a swim in the ocean. I do that every morning, blah blah blah. And I went, oh, you're so lucky. I would love to be able to do that. And he just went as quick as a flash, went, oh, well, of course you do choose to live where you live. So it's on you. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's true. And he doubled down and he went, yeah, he said, most people just don't. They say shit like that without realizing that there's absolutely nothing stopping them other than taking a moment to ask themselves the question, is that really true? And if it is, are you willing to then make a different choice? And I think that that is a place where people get really stuck
Mm.
because they it's almost hard to be with the simple truth of, yeah, of course you can. If I said, like, if you and Vanessa really were in a position where you said, do you know what, we would like to move to the North Shore, like, you can do that. Like, it's not like that's not on
Mm.
offer, that's on offer.
Mm.
But you guys are just comfortable, you're like, oh, it's not for right now. So it's that coming back to that I think, whether it is you're getting stuck in the how, whether you're getting stuck in the aspirational side of things, whether you're getting attached to the idea that happiness lives there. Like, actually, there's more than two places, I guess. There can be any form of attachment to the idea that something is either lives there or something's getting in the way or you need to have the means. Actually, I think the way to cut through all of that is to slow down and come back and ask yourself some questions, which is like, oh, is that actually true?
Mm.
Like, is that true? Is that what I really do? I actually want that? Well, if that was true, what do I think I would have? You know, and if it is true, like, what is actually getting in my way? And it suddenly gets very real, I think, to go, oh, okay. Like, either it's not, it is true, I do want that, and it's not on offer now, or there's nothing for me to do right now, or I do want that and it is on offer, and there's nothing actually stopping me, or yeah, there's some obstacles I'd have to overcome, but it is on offer. It just becomes more of a real, like, check-in point, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
what do you make of that?
No, I love that. I think that I think that, we talk about practice. I think that practice of sitting quietly and saying, well, is that actually true? Is probably a lovely way of collapsing back into the lazy boy and doing the observation of, oh, what is the noisy intellect and my lovely ego who seeks to protect me all the time? What is the narrative on the airwaves today? Because it's not that the ego is bad, but the ego is the sum of our fears and experiences. And so the ego is like, okay, Um, yeah, that's probably not the, think about the disruption, and the kids are in school, and all your friends are in the same town, and da 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 da. And if you sit back and go, well, what what is actually true and what is on offer, I think that's a lovely practical suggestion for being in your awareness. And then, to your point, okay, what's on offer from that place? And then, like Dan and his wife, you suddenly find yourself selling your life in the UK and moving to Dubai, because that is that is following a tickle, and it's the tickle in the absence of the noise.
Yeah. When we were with Christy Halverson the last time, we talked about like the tickles and the twists of your soul. I think
Mm,
one thing that's maybe valuable to bring into this conversation is sometimes what appears in our dreams, um, I think can often feel very scary. So, I think it's not always as maybe, in Dan's case, like it is a real example, but it's also quite a neat and tidy positive example, which is like because because it's his whole life, and so like in one sense it's like a real positive disruptive force. He and his wife and everyone are very excited, but I think sometimes daydreams, that when you get down into those questions of like what is true, I think also they can feel quite daunting,
mm.
because they're still dreams, and they're just like a signal. They're an invitation sometimes.
Give me an
And
example of what you're talking about.
I've got two examples. One's kind of mine, and one is an example that scared me when I heard it. Um, but like I've gone back into the world of work, from self-employed to employed. It's probably the move. And interestingly, like I had many times where I did think, oh, like if there was one company in my own head, I was like, if there's one company that I would work for, it would probably be Jewel, and I'd love to work with Paul. And then, what, and I didn't do anything about that for a long time, because as soon as I got down to into the like, is that true? Kind of any form of interrogation of that, it very quickly, that what appeared was like the level more disruption for probably like Sean and the boys, not necessarily me so much, but thinking that that would be disruptive. Like I that's probably going to lead to a lot of like uncomfortable. That's probably going to be some uncomfortable things in there. I'm not sure like if how that's going to go down. And then I'll be like, you know what? No, like I'm just going to put that one back on the shelf, because I'm not willing to kind of open myself up to the unknown of like what could that lead to. Um,
Mm.
and I've since done it, and it is disruptive. It is disruptive. It's not all smooth sailing. Like it's just not all smooth sailing. There's lots of it, which is great, but there's also like tension. There's also like that tension of like the world is shifting and changing after like 7 years of being self-employed and kind of being here, and being much more probably having less demands on my time, to being back in a world of work where you do have demands on your time, which means that saying no to things, and being like, no, like I want to, I'm doing this, and then there's that like tension that can appear, and has been. It's not a massive problem. It's not a problem. It's just a truth. It's just like we're working our way through kind of finding this new equilibrium. Um, but I think when we are faced sometimes with our daydreams, like part of the suffering, if you will, is getting into the idea of like the consequences of following your daydreams. And the example that scared me, or well, I did actually at the time, it just shut me down. I was talking to Christy in one of my coaching sessions, and we were talking about a very similar conversation. And then she said, like a friend of hers was like kind of in a I don't know whether it was in conversation with a coach or whatever, but she got to the point where it was like, oh my God, like if I was to follow this path, it was like she said, I'm 99% certain my life will fall apart. Like I'll probably end up getting divorced and like my life would literally fall apart and I'd be starting again type thing. And at the time, I remember when Christy said it to me and I was like, what did she do? And she said, well, if I am for living this life from this place, then I already know the answer. I've got to follow my knowing. And she did. And it did fall apart. And then it, you know, all played out and a new life kind of formed from that destruction.
Mm.
And I think that's like, I think there's a funny part of this that some of the suffering that comes from a daydream is knowing that it's a true calling and also knowing that to follow it means potentially detonating the status quo
Mm.
and living in the conflict between those two knowings.
But I guess, if you think about the the Buddhist truth, the first truth of like all life is suffering because of the tension that you've pointed to, then do we do you think we lessen that suffering when we, like Christie's friend, where we surrender to what is? We're like, oh well, if I am going to live my life from this place and I see this place, then by surrendering entirely to that and just going with the perfect unfolding, you no longer suffer? Because it must be hard, like having your whole world fall apart. But what's on the other side of that?
Well, that's the great question, because the answer is, well, what do you think is on the other side of that?
I think if you're doing it from that place, then what is on the other side is exactly what was going to happen anyway.
Maybe.
And the so in essence you've let go,
Yeah.
and in letting go you've significantly reduced the suffering.
What makes that true? I'm playing devil's advocate. I will share my perspective on this, but what makes that true?
No, I like this. What makes that true is your awareness that you're no longer trying to pursue happiness and safety. You're just surrendering to what is. Whereas before, in her example, she was, I don't know the story, but I would assume that there was an element of like trying to save the marriage or trying to stay in that situation, or trying to protect against the bad things that could go wrong, to eventually just say no. What I know, what I feel is this is going to happen, and I just have to let go and surrender to it. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if it does happen, so be it. And on the other side of that is, I hope, contentment, peace, love.
Well, like there, so and if I go back to, I don't know in that story either, but I do think that there's what we in yeah, I do think that that's the narrative that we make up. I do, and actually, I'm going to just say, like, we make up the narrative that before the moment has been efforting and holding on and like blah blah blah, and after the moment, what we're hoping for is this idyllic world. I think therein lies suffering, like because in one sense, we play the game of before and after, and we're like strategizing between the two, like, okay, like if I let go, then I won't be suffering, and because I'll have let go and I'll have accepted that this is not the way it's going to be, and by letting go, my hope is that I will have like peace and joy and happiness on the other side. I wonder in that example, and I actually just don't know whether someone just had an insight, like in a daydream, in a conversation, and just caught a glimpse of a possibility that they'd never seen before. Because linking it back to daydreams, I often think that's what it is. It's like, oh my God, like see having an insight, and then it's like, what are you willing to do now? And and the reason why I was curious about, do you think is there less suffering or more suffering? I think in many ways, as we're talking about it, and maybe there's a distinction here between suffering, like creating like internal suffering, versus
Mm,
things being hard, like life just being hard at times.
mm,
And there's probably a distinction there, like um actually I suppose, and I'm jumping into your world now, but I guess I've my take on, yours and well, Vanessa's journey in particular, but yours as a couple through her cancer experience was low suffering, because there was a high level of acceptance of like, okay, like this is what is. But at times it was really fucking hard as well. Like
mm,
I'm sure there was moments where it was really hard.
mm.
Um, and I think there's a distinction between those two things, because I think if we're looking for the idea that life is going to be easier, harder, or easier, then someone said to me, like, will life be harder if I do the X or easier if I do Y? I'd be like, it'll just be the same. It'll still be life. It'll still be a beautiful blend of hard and easy and fast and slow. And sometimes it's going to fuck you up, and sometimes it's going to like just wrap its arms around you and give you a big cuddle. But it will be all of that forever. But the extent to which you suffer is the extent to which you believe it should be different to that.
We are drifting dangerously close to beautiful suffering, to suffer beautifully. Because, 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 like, I honestly, I know, like, when I say to suffer beautifully, you have a nosebleed, but I hear exactly what you're saying, because I think what is on the other side, and if there's a before and after, and yeah, I get it, it's all one and it's all part of the perfect unfolding, and you can't do much about it anyway, because you can fight it and fight and fight it, but eventually what's coming for you gets you anyway. But the I would like to think that the the other side of the coin, when you turn it over, to your point, is not a life without suffering. It's not unicorns, rainbows, rose petals, and love, peace, and harmony. But when I say love, peace, and contentment, it means being able to walk through the shit and smile. It's kind of like to suffer beautifully. It's like, yeah, life is hard. Yeah, I still fucking have a mortgage, or I'm now divorced and I'm living on my own and I don't know where it's going to go. But the acceptance of not knowing, but just being, means you suffer beautifully versus suffering hard and suffering in an ugly way where you are constantly fighting it and you're trying to control it and you're trying to protect, which I think is, and I'm just talking from a personal place here. You know, the letting go, the like the not knowing, that the I don't give a fuck, it'll unfold the way it's going to unfold, has been super liberating for me. Are things still hard? Does my wife still get cancer? Am I, like, do I still have days where work is incredibly taxing or like what have you? Yeah, for sure. But I can go back to that place of beautiful suffering. In fact, I did it yesterday. Like yesterday, I woke up, I had a day where I was on a call from 6:30, and I think I got off the phone at about 6 o'clock last night. So it was almost 12 hours sitting on my ass, like literally going from meeting to meeting to meeting, discussion to discussion. And I mean, my world, like I'm context switching the whole time. So it's like your brain is like, I arrived at like Vanny had an event last night. And I arrived there and I was like brain dead. Like I could hardly string a sentence together. But during the course of yesterday, I was very conscious of having a moment like, fuck this. But I instantly caught myself and I was like, how lucky am I? Like, stop thinking about it. Just be curious about the fucking 10 conversations you're about to have. Be curious and see what unfolds. And actually, by the end of the day, despite being mentally exhausted and verbally talked out, I was like, it was fucking cool. I felt a contentment and I hadn't exercised. I probably hadn't eaten properly and I'd probably overtaxed my bladder. But I was like, it felt nice because I wasn't running narratives in my head.
Mm. Well, I think you're bringing us back to like the first principles, really, of of what's on offer at any point. Like it's the first what's on offer at any point is to notice the experience that you're creating for yourself, and from that place, choose. Pure intelligent energy in form with the ability to create our own experience and observe ourselves doing so. And from there, once we notice, choose. Um, which, you know, that's always on. That to me is like it is the fundamental truth. And sometimes that seems easy, and sometimes that seems hard. And I actually think I want to link it back, I guess, to the daydreaming piece because I think it's easier. I'm not saying like I really like that example because that's in the flow of life. It's like, okay, like, hang on. Like, what's the narrative I'm living into? Now, you can apply that anywhere. If we bring it back to daydreams, it's the same question. Hang on. Like, what's the narrative that I'm living into here? And then what do I want to do about that? And, I think when I think about letting go, like, I guess I'm always probably, my disposition is, I think I'm drawn to the possibility of, um, like the creative possibility that lives in daydreams
Mm,
because I think a huge proportion of the world do not give themselves permission to accept what shows up and to let go of the narratives and to go with what's there, like to let go of all the narrative or just be like, oh fuck, I don't want to buy a Riyadh. That's okay. Like, let me just crack on with my life. Or, do okay. What do I want to do with that? I'm drawn to that because I actually think, in one sense, just if someone said to me, "What causes more suffering?" I would say the most suffering is caused through denial. In one sense, even more than attachment. Like
mm.
that
Interesting.
that we get it. It's not even the attachment is the beginning of the suffering, but then even the denial, not even allowing ourselves to go and play in the possibility. So we're both
Mm,
attached to the idea that something holds happiness, but then we're not even willing to get into the game to find out. Like, maybe you
mm,
will be fucking like ridiculously happy. Maybe you will. Someone goes, I think if I was living by the beach, I'd be ridiculously happy. And be like, fucking move to the beach. No, I can't. Okay. Well, like, that's fucking weird. You've just told me you think you'd be ridiculously happy if you did this thing. But now you're telling me you're not going to give yourself permission to try living beside the beach. Now, you might not be ridiculously happy, but what if you could? And that's where it
mm,
gets interesting. You go, like, happiness doesn't live there, but like, you might be ridiculously happy. You might find that, like, you just fucking love it. All my swearing coming in. I've realized I get real. This is what I really think, actually. I get annoyed with myself because the amount of times you catch yourself saying stuff and then going, but I'm not even going to get into that game. Oh, I think I'd like this or I'd love that. Oh, wow. Like, you doing anything about it? No, 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 no. Okay. Well, then, like, you're much better off stopping talking about it and, like, really being with the life that's here because this one's amazing. Like, it's always here. But if you find yourself, it's interesting. If you have the same, it's that Liz Morel thing. What's coming for you won't miss you. I think that's true about daydreams as well. Like, if you're having the same daydream over and over again, if the universe is continuously knocking on your door, kind of with the same message, like, sometimes you just got to answer and go, like, yeah, I keep having this idea about that house on the North Shore. I'm just using that as the example, and
mm.
and every time I go on a drive, I see a house on the North Shore, and like, and then someone was talking to me about the North Shore. You go, I love the idea of the North. You go, well, I- go to the North Shore. I think I want to leave my wife or husband, or I have this vision of I think I'd be happier. Okay, like, you gonna do anything about that? No. Why? Well, because I don't want to upset anybody. Okay, well, like the only person you're upsetting right now is yourself. So it comes back to, and I wonder about those, because that is where, that the and I wonder about. I'm just wondering what is it that stops us, and I think it's conditioning. I think it's the idea that what other people think actually matters. What society will tell you means anything.
Well, that's ego, right?
Well, it's conditioning. As like it's ego and it's conditioning. Like ego is a conditioned. It's our self concept, which is a function of our conditioning. Your ego is different to my ego.
Mm,
I think your conditioning for whatever reason, like, and you said this. You've noticed that you have a lot. You now know why you've been the way you've been, even though you didn't know it for the longest time. Like I'm not
mm,
saying, but we've talked about this before. Whereas
mm,
I don't necessarily see that in my past. I see a much more conditioned to try and live within the boundaries that you're supposed to live in. Like definitely for me, that would be the conditioning that I would say is pretty dominant and still there. So so it is your ego. But I think for a lot of us, like our ego is a function of the conditioning we receive from the society within which we've grown up, our family
mm.
situation, our schooling, our friendship circles, and then you have these daydreams which challenge everything that is at the moment like kind of wired into your subconscious to think about that conversation we had with Lindsay Robinson the other day. Like there's wiring down there that's still freaking running the show, and yet up here you're having an insight or a desire, and it's like, and there's this conflict and you don't even know why you're so conflicted, but in reality it's because you're coming up against your belief system. You're coming up against your belief system, and you have beliefs that you don't
Mm.
even know what the fuck they are. So you kind of go in like, I know I want to live by the beach. I want to live by the beach. You're like, why do you live by the beach? It's like, I actually don't know why I'm not doing anything. And the answer is, yeah, because there's something in there that's holding you back. Now, can you have the courage to step? Can and this is where I do think sometimes living requires courage because it sometimes takes either courage or faith, one of the two. Maybe they're two sides of the same coin. And you and Vanessa are a great example of this. Like if you look at, it's 2 years now, I think, since you were in France for the World Cup. Is it 2 years, roughly?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And back then, that was your first, like, kind of real experiment at the time of saying, I'm going to digital nomad and just going to see where this takes us. But if you look at the last 2 years, it's been pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
But because you were prepared to actually go, I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna take a step, and then you've not stopped globe hopping since then. I'm amazed you're in your own house today.
So am I.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is a great example, actually. And Vanny and I were talking about it the other day. We were talking in the context of probably moving to the North Shore, actually. And I said to her, I said, well, why I have no, um, I guess the word is suffering, but I didn't use the word suffering. The reason why I have no anxiety about moving or selling the house or downsizing or upsizing or whatever is, I said, because of the example of when, and I actually said, Al challenged me and he said, well, why can't you travel and work and make that all happen? And I was like, well, because obviously I need to be here and I need to do, blah, blah. And then, yeah. And then I thought, fuck it. Actually, to your point at the top of this conversation, is that true? I don't know, but I'm fucking going to go find out. And then I just got out of my own way. I was like, I don't know. And I'm happy not knowing. And I'm happy to just go see. And that made all the difference. Like, I cannot believe, if I look back at the last 24 months and how it has all unfolded, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. And it's phenomenal. And has it been easy? Not always. Have there been times where it's been hard and tricky? For sure. But here's the interesting thing that I'm noticing, and I'm going to experiment with this more and more. Is some people say to me like, "Oh my god, I don't know how you do it. Like, you guys are just fucking constantly on the move." And Pete actually said to me twice in the last week, he's like, "Jesus, you guys socialize a lot." And I'm like, "Do we? I don't know. Maybe." But I got back from Morocco. Actually, Vanny flew home from Morocco. I flew to Spain because Pete and we had some work in Spain last Thursday, Friday. Flew back to Massachusetts. Got home at midnight. Slept for 3 hours. Got in the car 20 to 4 in the morning. Drove 4.5 hours to Maine. Took 2 boats out of the water because we had to be ready by 10 a.m. for shots and docks. And then proceeded to drink my face off, eat lots of food, and then go for an afternoon kip, and then get back on the horse again. And if you allow yourself to think about that, and I consciously, when I was in Morocco and Vanny and I were talking about like, how are we going to do this? Like, when you fly into Logan, are we just going to get a hotel at Logan, or should we drive to Portland and then sleep for 4 hours in Portland and then drive up? And I was like, I have no fucking idea. It will just happen the way it's going to happen. And eventually Vanny said to me, I think you should just come home. And I was like, perfect. So I did. Jumped in an Uber, came home, crashed out for 3 hours, woke up, no alarm, woke up, let's go. And had the most amazing day, most amazing weekend. And this is the experiment that I'm going to run now in earnest, like hardcore. This notion of being busy and like trying to fit too much in, what a fucking illusion. What a fucking illusion. I'm strapping TNT to that motherfucker, and I'm going to blow it sky high, because when you stop trying to plan, schedule, do all that crap, and you just go see. When are you going to sleep? I have no fucking idea. When are you going to eat? Not sure. But I'm just going to go see, because this is what is showing up. It's kind of like oh, well, that's what we're doing. We're sleeping for 3 hours and then we're going to go take boats and things. Would you have a heart attack? Maybe. But that's what's on offer right now. Let's go. Let's get in that sandpit. And I'm going to do that more and more. And this concept of being like too busy or not having time or nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Just going to see what happens from full surrender. Because I'm sure I will sleep when I'm meant to sleep.
Nice.
I will get a portable defibrillator though, which would be nice.
I think that I don't know if it's my bumper sticker, but it's definitely something like I'm just gonna I'm gonna just I'm just going to see.
Mm.
I'm just gonna see. I'm just gonna see. See what's there. Like the
Coddy-wampling.
Yeah, well, for me, it was like that. To me, sits beneath the like blowing up all the stuff, which to me just sounded like sticking TNT below, but beneath a whole bunch of narratives. And what was left was, well, I'm just going to go and take a look, and I'm just going to see what's there. And I wonder if we all lived from that place a little bit more, because that feels so much more accessible. I'm just going to take a look. Thinking back to where we started the daydream, I'm gonna take a look at what's on the beach.
Mm. Mm.
You know, I'm gonna go and have I'm gonna go and take a look. I'm gonna have that conversation, or just I'm gonna go and take a look. Or you know what? There's nothing to look at, so I'm just gonna be right here. And it's kind of, you could have it as simple as those two things. It's either with with a daydream, it's either, do you know what? I'm actually going to go and take a look because I actually know I want to, or nah, I'm just going to stay right here.
Mm.
Both is as good as each other because both of them feel like from that same place. And it's a very simple choice between the narratives. It's either go take a look or just stay exactly where you are. No story needed.
That's
And
the key. No story needed.
no story, no suffering. Just a simple
That's a
choice.
fucking great bumper sticker right there. No story,
There's
no suffering.
no story. No, that's our bumper sticker for this episode. No
Fucking
story,
right.
no suffering. Yeah,
That's a
baby.
corker.
Yeah, let's not ruin that. 'Cause that one was natural. So we'll just end here and be like, the perfect bumper sticker just appeared. Good topic, mate. Good topic. That was rich.
Yeah.
Felt
Yeah,
rich.
thanks, mate. That was a fun exploration because I had no clue where that was going to go, and I didn't even know what I was wrestling with. Not that I was wrestling, but I was just curious. Like it's just a thing because I do daydream a lot, and so that was a lovely exploration of being able to daydream without stories.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, very cool. No, thank you. All right, folks. Well, that is a wrap for today. Um, we hope you've enjoyed it and that it's triggered some sort of insights, perhaps around daydreaming or otherwise. And if it does, just go and take a look. And if it doesn't, stay exactly where you are. And remember, no story, no suffering. Go forth, live into your brilliance.